of Scotland, especially for that morning rush hour. We could see a few centimetres of snow for a time before it then starts to turn back to rain as we go into the afternoon. But the potential for some disruption as that wintry weather hits Scotland during tomorrow. A few showers for Northern Ireland, most of England, Wales dry and sunny once the fog has cleared, but still cold, struggling to get much above freezing. And quickly on Friday evening, temperatures drop back below freezing. Bear that in mind if you're heading out. With showers across parts of the north, could be icy on Friday night and into Saturday morning. At this stage, the showers will mostly be of rain at low levels, but some snow is still possible, certainly over the hills of northern England during Saturday, and more snow showers coming in across the highlands of Scotland. A few showers getting into parts of Wales as well. Again, most of these will be rain at low levels. Much of the south and the east will be dry and bright on Saturday. And look at this, 4 or 5 degrees. Most of us haven't seen that for a good few days. It's going to turn milder still on Sunday. This area of low pressure is moving in. It's bringing milder air, but it's also bringing strong winds and, for a time on Sunday, some heavy snow.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. We'll ask tonight, can Harry and Meghan sink any lower as they launch all-out war against the royal family? We'll speak to the skipper. First exclusive interview of the boat that picked up 31 people in the English Channel yesterday. We'll ask why are HSBC withdrawing all funding for North Sea oil and gas exploration. We'll look at Ron DeSantis questioning some of the vaccine manufacturers. And on Talking Pints, I'll be joined by Camilla, formerly Sunday Express, now Daily Telegraph, and shortly to be a presenter on GB News. But all of that comes after the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening from the GB Newsroom. Tens of thousands of nurses are taking part in the biggest strike in NHS history. Picket lines have been set up in England, Wales and Northern Ireland in the first of 2 12-hour walkouts over pay. Staff are providing some urgent care, but routine surgery and other planned treatment is disrupted. Health Secretary Steve Barclay says the union's call for a 19% pay rise is unaffordable.
We also recognise the huge contribution that we saw from nurses during the pandemic, and that's why last year we made a special case where nurses got an extra 3% when others in the public sector did not. But we've got to balance that against what is affordable to the wider economy, and asking for a 19% pay rise way above what most viewers themselves are receiving is not affordable given the many other economic pressures that we face.
Network rail workers have voted overwhelmingly to accept a pay offer. It affects around 2,500 members of the TSSA. The RMT remains in a separate dispute with Network Rail after its members rejected an offer earlier this week. Meanwhile, ground baggage handlers at Heathrow Airport have suspended planned strike action after receiving an improved pay offer. More than 400 staff members had been set to begin a 72-hour walkout tomorrow morning. The Unite union says it will now ballot its members, and other planned industrial action remains in place pending the outcome. The Prime Minister is making his first trip to Northern Ireland since taking office. Tonight, he's expected to host informal talks with political leaders in an attempt to end Stormont suspension. Rishi Sunak will also use the trip to promote the government's investment in shipbuilding in Belfast. He says the deal to build Royal Navy support vessels will create thousands of high-value jobs. The 4 boys who died after falling into a frozen lake in Solihull have been named by West Midlands Police. 8-year-old Finlay Butler, his 6-year-old brother Samuel and their cousin, 11-year-old Thomas Stewart, were taken to hospital where they died on Monday. The 4th child, who reportedly tried to save the others, has been named as Jack Johnson, aged 10. The families say they are devastated by the loss of the boys in such tragic circumstances. The royal family have gathered at Westminster Abbey this evening for a Christmas carol service hosted by the Princess of Wales and attended by the King. The Together at Christmas concert is being attended by nearly 2,000 people in a service to recognise the selfless efforts of individuals and families. The royal family put on a united front just hours after the second instalment of Harry and Meghan's controversial Netflix docu-series was released. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Nigel.
Good evening. I don't expect you to sit through another 3 hours of Netflix of Harry and Meghan. I mean, that's too much to ask of anybody. But I do think, and I know some people have emailed me to say, goodness, but why do we keep talking about these people? But I do think it's important because actually, as far as the royal family is concerned, its reputation going on from here, I think what has happened today might just be quite significant. Let me give you a little taster of what Prince Harry had to say in this document, so-called documentary, about his own brother and relations with the press.
I would far rather get destroyed in the press than play along with this game or this business of trading. And to see my brother's office copy the very same thing that we promised the two of us would never ever do, that was heartbreaking.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Let's just have one more clip, if you can bear it. Just one more clip. And this is Harry talking about their relations with the Daily Mail and Meghan's miscarriage.
I believe my wife suffered a miscarriage because of what the Mail did. I watched the whole thing. Now, do we absolutely know that the miscarriage was caused by that? Of course we don't. But bearing in mind the stress that caused, the lack of sleep, and the timing of the pregnancy, how many weeks in she was, I can say from what I saw, that miscarriage was created by what they were trying to do to her.
Well, I think they're truly dreadful people. I think the absolute disrespect they showed to Harry's grandfather when they did the big interview with Oprah Winfrey when they knew he was on his deathbed. I think making the last couple of years of the Queen's life as difficult as they did, let alone trashing his father, his brother, the institution, the Commonwealth. I think they're ghastly. But I'm asking you, do you think they can sink any lower? Give me your thoughts, Farage at gbnews.uk. Well, somebody who may have a more informed opinion than me, but I don't know what he's going to say, is former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole. That attack on his own brother is quite extraordinary.
A lot of it is extraordinary. Nigel, thank goodness it's all over. We've seen the last 3 parts. It hasn't been Sermon on the Mount. It's been 6 sermons from Montecito in California, and each one of them has been 60 minutes long of self-justification and self-pity. It's not a good look. And when it comes down to it, it's glossy, it's well made, it's slick. The 2 main protagonists give very polished performances. But really, what's the message? The message is we're right, they're wrong, we're wonderful, and they're horrid. And as you intimated, it's not really a documentary. No. It's more lifestyles of the rich and famous and the woke. It is a 6-part advertisement for them. There's a lot of talk about love, but a lot of things are not mentioned. And looking at it, I thought, well, what happened to the Happy Prince? Where's he gone?
The Jack the Lad, who was the most popular royal, I mean, there's almost ever been, wasn't he?
He was hugely popular, and so were both they were both popular in this country. They couldn't have had a greater and warmer welcome. So when you see this, you slightly despair and think, well, what really have they got to complain about? What was so difficult? What was so awful about living in a palace? At one stage, Harry says that he feared for his own survival. Now, this is a guy who gallantly served his country 2 tours in Afghanistan as a forward artillery spotter and as the front seat in an Apache attack helicopter. He could have been shot down by the Taliban. He could have come back in a body bag. That is pressure. What are we talking about here? This is a family feud.
But all this, you know, doing this and peace and love, this is very West Coast American, isn't it? Where everyone's got a therapist. There's an awful lot of that in this. But he has attacked, I mean, Michael, he's attacked his brother today in the most extraordinary way. He's basically said his father was absent. You know, he was brought up by people in different parts of the world. I mean, families have their rows. All families have their rows and their difficulties. But this has been done so publicly. And surely if you are the king or you're the Prince of Wales, you've got to think to yourself, this has been done actually to damage the institution itself.
It's a terrible thing to see brothers fight, one of the worst things you can ever see. But these brothers are princes. They're princes of the blood royal. And all of this behaviour over matters which are relatively trivial, it's all very EastEnders. It's not Buckingham Palace. And I don't think it dignifies anybody involved. I think it's highly regrettable. But actually, at the end of the day, of course, there are some nasty... It's done by innuendo. There's never any direct accusation. And certainly... Or facts. And had there been an attack on Kate, Princess of Wales, or the Queen Consort, Camilla, I think there would have been a stronger reaction. That wasn't there. And so you have to say to yourself, what is this all about? They've shot their bolt.
So on the basis they played their hand of cards, I think that's a reasonable assumption to make. That, you know, they've gone for gold with this. Should the palace respond or ignore and move on?
Well, had they come up with some really specific allegations, who said what, when it happened, what the consequence was, but we don't get that. We get innuendo and we get suggestion. I would have said that they should have responded line by line and rebutted it. And I understand that the palace has a dossier of things that they think are wrong or straightforward misstatements of fact. And maybe they will respond. But I think they can safely ignore it.
Do you?
Yes, I do. Of course, what we don't know is what's going to be in his book called Spare, which is going to be published in January, although my wife saw it on a discount in Woodbridge the other day in W.H. Smith, so we don't know much about how much of an impact this book is going to have. But if he wants to rattle a few royal skeletons then, maybe the king will consider removing their titles HRH. His and Her Royal Highness.
Why not do it now?
Well, because I think we have to go a little bit further down this road. Of course, to us, a title doesn't matter, but in royal circles, that's big medicine. That matters. And if that was sent, that would be a very strong sign of disapproval. And one can't say it's not merited, but the fact is, they've burned their boats. They are now owned body and soul by Netflix. And they want to live in California. In a way, of course, Prince Harry is fulfilling the destiny of his mother, because at the time of her death, she was actively considering moving to California. She always felt the Americans would give her a break, and there was a possibility that she would live with Dodie Fayed at the former Julie Andrews and Blake Edwards mansion on the beach at Malibu. So, and I think he refers to that in one of these episodes that we've all lived through, grueling. We've lived through every moment of it.
Most of our audience haven't. You're here to help them. Tell them what was there.
Well, I think if they do look at it, what I'm very encouraged by is the fact that women usually get it, and I think 60% of the audience will be women. They will judge her, and they will judge whether Meghan is the most wonderful, kind, compassionate, liberal person that ever lived, and a wonderful actress, or whether she is actually the Becky Sharp of our age, you know, in Vanity Fair, that wonderful story about a go-ahead girl. So we have to find out, but this exercise, I'm not quite sure what it was for, apart from the fact that Netflix have got a huge investment in it. They're trying to make money. It's a commercial undertaking,
of course,
and they're getting the figures. They're very pleased about that, but if it's just a one-note Sussex samba and all they've got to offer is rubbishing the royal family, well, after a while, that gets a little bit tedious.
Michael Cole, thank you for joining me. And I find that actually rather reassuring, because I think they were out to do a lot more harm than that. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now, before 3 o'clock yesterday morning, about 8 miles south of Dungeness in the English Channel, there were some pretty dramatic events. And right at the very middle of all of it was the skipper of a scalloping boat, Arcturus. And Raymond Strachan joins me on the line now. He's still out at sea, still working hard, still fishing. Raymond, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've heard all sorts of stories. Just tell us, please, exactly what happened and how dangerous it was yesterday morning for those people.
Yeah, good evening, Nigel. Yes, I was first alerted about it at 2:30 in the morning. I was in my bed and the watchkeeper opened my cabin door and shouted migrants. So I got out of my bed, I came into my wheelhouse and I looked over the side out my window and there was a migrant hanging off my trawl wire while I was fishing. That's when I first knew it was the situation was going to be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been awful. Now, you managed, Raymond, you managed to get 31 of them onto your vessel. I know some of them you'd brought out of the water, and I understand you were putting them in hot showers and finding them dry clothes and all the rest of it.
That's correct, yes. When we seen a guy, one of the migrants hanging off the trawl wire, one of my crew went on deck and threw him a lifeline, and we pulled him alongside the boat. Then I started hauling my fishing.
I think we've lost the line. Yeah, we have. I'm sorry we've lost the line. The last time I spoke to Raymond, he was 20 miles south of the East Sussex coast. But look, we got him on the line for a bit. He explained what he did. Now, you know, whatever the politics of this, and nobody has been more outspoken about all these young males coming into our country, with dubious motives in some cases, and of course without passports and ID. But I myself was involved in a rescue 2 years ago. There were two young men in the water. I held one of them by the hands and tried to drag him over the gunnels. I couldn't do it because he was limp. He was getting hypothermic. And so whatever the politics of it, these were human beings. There were many kids among them. And actually it was a miracle. I think a miracle that scalloping boat just happened to be as close to that boat. I have little doubt that if our tourists had not been there, the death toll, and we think it's 8, but there are still people missing, the death toll would have been 40 or more. Not long after Raymond did what he did, the Kent lifeboats were launched. One of them, I won't name which one, but one of them reached a scene, a pretty grim scene, and extraordinarily, one of the RNLI crew dived over the side to save somebody. I mean, quite extraordinary. And again, their job is to save lives, not to make political judgments. Yes, I've been critical of them being a taxi service in the past, but I have to say, what they did yesterday morning was above and beyond the call of duty. And isn't it great that we have people in this country prepared to do those things in return for no money whatsoever? In a moment, I'll discuss HSBC's decision to withdraw all funding for future North Sea and gas projects, and just how mad I think that is.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I asked you, can Harry and Meghan sink any lower? Some of your responses coming in. Ryan says, almost certainly. They really are hideous people. King Charles needs to strip them of their titles and money and excommunicate them from the royal family. They have betrayed both the royal family and the whole United Kingdom. Ryan, I'd like to try and argue against you on that, but I'm afraid I simply can't. Darryl says, I like this. I'm waiting for Harry and Meghan season 2, the divorce. And one viewer says, yes, for the money, they will sink lower and lower. Well, maybe they will, but I think the important point about today is they've got no more cards to play. They've pretty much said all they've got to say. They're spent. There's nothing more they can do. You know, for the tens of millions of dollars they've got from Netflix, they would have to, I mean, you know, they can't now start to say more things about the royal family or the last few years. And maybe Michael Cole was right. Maybe actually the palace can just safely ignore this and move on, knowing that the levels of public respect in this country of both of them are very, very low. Only Prince Andrew is lower. Now, first thing this morning, on the BBC website, where else could it possibly have been? We saw the news that banking giant HSBC is to cease all future lending and involvement in oil exploration and extraction projects in the North Sea. They're doing it because they have a commitment to net zero. Well, isn't that absolutely wonderful? But I wonder, will their actions actually help reduce levels of global CO2? And what does it mean for the British economy, given that since the excess taxes, as I see them anyway, have been put on North Sea oil and gas, already there are many companies talking themselves about perhaps not going for projects. Well, joining me is Angela Knight, former CEO of Energy UK. Angela, this HSBC decision, a surprise or not?
Not entirely, because the major banks, the PLCs, those with shareholders, those who have to put out their annual reports, those who have to show exactly what they're doing about, as we call it, ESG, you know, the environment, social governance issues, of which net zero is one, are under huge pressure from all sorts of quarters not to finance new oil and gas. Now, it's a foolish thing. To pressurise these banks in this way. It's foolish because we've got to have a plan.
Is it their own shareholders pressurising?
Well, they hear it from a lot of people. Some of their shareholders, yes, because, of course, the shareholders in major PLCs in this country and indeed elsewhere are big investment funds and pension funds, and they are putting on the pressure now to have net zero as far as their own investments are concerned. So they're looking through those who they invest in to see, you know, are they going to meet with the standards that they say that they have to set. So we're on a road at the moment in which many of us, of which I'm one, say absolutely, I do think that we should aim for a low carbon environment here and elsewhere, and make sure that we do things in as appropriate manner as possible. But to chop off financing oil and gas means that, in effect, you're prepared to say, well, my mum and dad or my grandparents are going to end up without power at some time because we haven't got the fuel in place to go through this transition period, and that has never been thought through properly, and it's also never been thought through properly what the actual cost of net zero is. And so I say, let's put it out on the table and let's all be sensible and not, stick on the one hand which says today and tomorrow has got to be the same as today, but nor take that really exaggerated view which say, you know, I'm going to stick myself to the M25 or whatever.
It's not going to reduce global CO2 emissions. No. We'll just import that oil and gas, won't we?
We will. But actually what I hope will happen is that the finance, which actually is the case of much of this oil and gas exploration, certainly the smaller end, does not necessarily have to use the major banks, and therefore it'll be financed by different means. Now, all this puts an added complexity in it, and Actually, I don't criticise. It's easy to criticise HSBC. I do actually understand the bind that they have been put in.
Interesting.
And that's why it has to be taken at a far more sensible level than has been the case so
far. The
far.
push for ESG investing, despite the fact that last year in the stock market it was coal stocks and oil stocks that did remarkably well and non-ESG investors.
Well, you can actually argue things like investing in nuclear power is actually very ESG. You can argue that investing in gas for the transition purpose is also very ESG, because right now, because we haven't actually managed our energy security as well as we should have done, we're going to have to light up the coal-fired power stations that we've got left. Do you know, I think that's a good thing, because I'm in favour of this country having power,
Angela,
not having power.
You're going to steal our futures from us. You're going to destroy the planet. I must go and lock myself on a gantry on the M25. I mean, these are the arguments that get put.
But an emotional argument doesn't put food on the table, it doesn't put shoes on your feet, and it doesn't keep your house warm. Having a decent plan, properly costed, of how you're getting from where you are to where you would like to be is what is required, and that means pragmatism. And I'm afraid I'm a boring old pragmatist.
No,
Nigel.
well, clearly,
I really am.
Clearly, there'll be. I'm sure Greta will be most upset with you.
I'm sure she will.
Quick thought to end with. On Monday, I talked about the fact that renewables were down to 3% as that big high pressure sat over the country. There was an extraordinary moment when electricity prices traded per megawatt hour at 100 times the average for the last 3 years. Every steel plant in the country closed production for that day. I didn't see that being mentioned on the BBC.
No.
How do we get a proper debate about this?
And that is exactly what should be mentioned, because, you know, how do you think that we manage on days where the renewables aren't there because the wind doesn't blow, the sun doesn't shine, and we've got the cold anticyclone not just hanging over us but hanging over Europe? And the answer at the moment is you shut down the major electricity users, which are the big industrial plants.
Is that called rationing?
And that is called rationing in one stage, in one way, and the other way, of course, these are contracts that they have agreed to in the past. But the reality of this needs to go out there to the British people, because this is all about jobs, it's all about keeping production here in the UK. So put it in the round. And I never, never, never favour anybody who just goes out and says, I want this and I want this thing and I want this thing only. That doesn't work. That's what you do when you're a child. When you're a grown-up, you have to have your plan, you have to have your pragmatism, you have to work out how you get from A to B, and you have to include in that sometimes very uncomfortable things. And right now, for the Green lobby, the very uncomfortable thing is renewables doesn't work in winter.
Yeah, I like that. Very good. Well, here on GB News, we are having these debates. And, of course, we allow all sides of the argument to get made. You know, I've had Just Stop Oil in the studio and all these people, and we allow that to happen. But it is an astonishing thing that the Broadcasting Act that Tony Blair brought in 2001 says that on issues around carbon emissions and climate change and global warming, that the science is settled, therefore there is no need for broadcasters to provide due impartiality, which they have to do on every other subject. It is a remarkable thing. We're here fighting it. Angela Knight, thank you again for joining me in the studio. Last night, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, made, I think, a pretty extraordinary press statement in which he said, in Florida, it is a crime to missell products. And the vaccine manufacturers told people, take these vaccines and you will not catch COVID, but many did. He's calling for a grand jury to investigate. I think that's rather interesting. We'll deal with that in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
As a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Back in October, a keen viewer of GB News decided to write to UK Visas and Immigration and to ask a very simple question, which was, how many hotels are being taken up in the United Kingdom by asylum seekers? And the response that this person got was 269 hotels were being taken up, and that was back in early October. And I was able to muse on air with you that I thought by now it must be over 300. Well, I apologise for misleading you. I should never do that, because a letter dated the 28th of November from UK Visas and Immigration has said that as of the 11th of November, there are 419 hotels being used to temporarily accommodate asylum seekers. Well, we'll see just how temporary that is. But I mean, that is actually an astonishing, truly astonishing rate of change. And just to complete the picture on what is happening in the channel, of course, we focused on what happened yesterday, the deflation of that boat, the saving of lives, the 8, we believe, 4 for certain have died, 4 more missing, perhaps more. 401 was the official figure for those that crossed the channel yesterday and went into the reception centre at the port of Dover. And I promise you, this Saturday, it looks calm. The numbers, once again, will be enormous, and that's more pressure, more hotels, more Butlins, more Pontins, whatever it may be. And the government keeps talking tough, but doing very little. Now, last night, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, gave a very interesting press conference, and this is what he had to say about vaccines and vaccine manufacturers.
Today, I'm announcing a petition with the Supreme Court of Florida to impanel a statewide grand jury to investigate any and all wrongdoing in Florida with respect to COVID-19 vaccines. And we anticipate that we will get the approval for that, and that will come with legal processes that will be able to get more information and to bring legal accountability for those who committed misconduct.
Well, Carol Kilgore is a London-based American lawyer. Welcome to the programme. DeSantis does go for it, doesn't he? I thought, from what knowledge I have of American law, that manufacturers of all kinds of vaccines were basically, well, I mean, immune from prosecution.
That's correct, Nigel. Manufacturers, distributors, and administrators, which would even include your school nurse, who administers a vaccine to a child without the parent's consent still enjoy very broad immunity under a law that was actually originally passed under George W. Bush in 2005. And it's since then, in 2020 and 2021, been used for the COVID pandemic. So what DeSantis is doing is quite clever, actually, because he's circumventing the vaccine immunity statute by bringing the possibility of criminal action under Florida state law.
I see. Because this is difficult for British audiences. They don't understand just how much autonomy the individual states have. So do you think what DeSantis is doing... I mean, what he's basically saying is, you told us, when you sold us this product, that if we got this double vaccine, we couldn't catch COVID, and yet we found actually we could catch COVID. Does he have some chance of a grand jury fighting against these companies?
Well, first of all, grand juries almost always follow the prosecutor. So there are going to be 18 people that will be chosen at random, and the prosecutor will nudge those 18 people to try and find enough evidence to indict whoever is responsible. Now, responsibility holds, as you mentioned, to the actual deceit and the lies. If it can be shown and there's enough evidence and they find probable cause that the people responsible at the vaccine manufacturers especially, if they lied about, or even if they didn't check sufficiently enough, if they didn't confirm.
And would that mean that perhaps part of this is whether the trials were fully conducted?
That could also play into it. Wow. Unfortunately, we won't be able to hear any of the witness testimony that goes before the grand jury because that's kept secret. But what will come out of it within 18 to 36 months will potentially be an indictment. And if that happens, then Florida becomes the test ground, and other states can do similar under their criminal codes.
Wow. This could be a very big deal, couldn't it?
Yes.
This could be a very fascinating. Carol, thank you for coming in and explaining that to us. The trouble with all these things is we'd all like to know which way does it go in the next fortnight. But as Carol explained, it's going to be best part of a couple of years before we know where this goes. In a moment, I'll be joined on Talking Pints by Camilla, longtime journalist, broadcaster, about to start her own show on GB News, and a well-known royal commentator too.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
It's that time of the day. Yes, it really is. It's Talking Pints, my favourite part of the day. And I'm joined this evening by Camilla Tominey. Camilla, welcome.
Lovely to see you, Nigel.
Talking Pints.
Thank you very much.
Now, the first time we met, you were on the Sunday Express.
Yes.
And I used to pick up the Sunday Express, and you'd see political reporter Camilla Tominey, royal reporter Camilla Tominey.
Yeah.
I mean, how many jobs did you have at that newspaper?
I actually had 4, because I was political editor, royal editor, a columnist, and I wrote the leaders. And that was the kind of lead and mean machine that the Sunday Express was. God love it. And we came into contact, didn't we? Because I think we can pretty much say that 100% of Sunday Express readers were Brexiteers. I think my editor at the time, Martin Townsend, said they'd never had a letter from a Remainer in all of the time he was editor. He was there for about 17 years himself. So we sort of saw Brexit coming ahead of a lot of other broadcasters and journalists, right?
Actually, it was the Express newspaper group that came out for Britain to leave the European Union in 2014.
Yes.
Way before the rest of the press. And what was it like working for Richard Desmond?
An interesting experience. I mean, he had this reputation that preceded him. We didn't see him all that much, actually, on the newsroom floor. There was lots of talk about his, there's always talk, isn't there, about ownership and interference in editorial. And actually, I never really saw that. I had to interview him once because he gave a load of money to Moorfields.
Yeah,
and so I was sent with my notebook down and was slightly intimidated as a quite rookie reporter, sort of take notes. And I think I started calling him sir. And he said, "You don't need to call me that. You can call me Richard." I was like, I just thought I should show some respect, sir.
Well,
he was
extraordinary bloke.
Extraordinary bloke, obviously hugely successful bloke.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a journalistic terms. Sometimes we had struggles over pay and things. Would you believe, Nigel? I even went with the NUJ and picketed. I went on strike. It wasn't very successful. Most people didn't go on strike. They just worked from home. But it was interesting times. It was just good being on a newspaper where the readership was extremely engaged in what we were saying. The paper meant everything to them. Yeah. Our Aunt Bessie, our standard reader, was kind of, a Brexit voting woman in her 60s living in Blackpool. And I felt that we were reaching parts that others didn't. So Brexit required us to travel the length and breadth of the country, actually finding out, like you do and GB News does, of actually finding out what is being thought outside the Westminster bubble, which is always
since
useful.
then, of course, you've gone on to the Telegraph, but you've done television and LBC radio and all sorts of things. And, I mean, your job at the Telegraph, again, it's quite broad in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
You write about a lot of different subjects.
I mean, I do the column, which I could write about anything. I've got to decide what I'm going to write it on for Saturday's paper tomorrow. And then I'm covering politics and royals. And actually, I'm exhausted.
Well, what a year.
What a year. What a 5 years. I mean, when you consider everything that's gone on. We were marvelling at it today because I had to obviously get up at the crack of dawn, binge watch all of the remainder of the Netflix documentaries. I'd like some sympathy for that.
Yeah, we'll come to that, don't worry.
It's a difficult job, but someone's got to do it, Nigel.
Well, I did say earlier on that I very much hope that our viewers and listeners didn't have to put themselves through it because we'd ask experts who had.
Tell you what, just read my commentary in the Telegraph. You can even watch a video when I sum it all up. But so politics and royals, if something isn't going on in the building behind us, something's going on in the palace over there. Yeah. So there's never a dull moment. And actually, both beats, they engage the readership. They're interesting, lots has happened. Peaks and troughs, obviously covering the Queen's probably the biggest story I've ever covered in my whole career.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for more than 20 years, having started out on local papers.
But clearly you're not busy enough. Because, no. Because on Sunday, the 8th of January, sitting in this very chair, in this studio, what are you going to be doing, Camilla?
So we're going to be doing a very punchy and personality-full, we hope, politics show over 90 minutes on a Sunday morning, taking on the competition.
Who for?
For you.
Oh, for GB News. Oh, there we are. Yeah.
We all know that.
I gave you the chance to advertise the show.
I thought that was a given. I was here having a pint with you precisely to promote that purpose.
No. So you're joining GB News. It'll be a Sunday morning programme.
Yeah. And we just want it to be informative and entertaining. We want it to be politics that packs a punch, but not necessarily full of strange gotcha moments where it's all about the presenter and not about the guests. There's some very serious issues for the politicians of this country to answer, and we want them to do that. We want to do it openly with debate and with audience participation, OK? This is the People's Channel, so we want the people to be involved in the questions we're answering and also in analysing some of the answers. So it's going to be jam-packed because we want it to be pacey. We want to take on the competition. For far too long we've had this assumption, this kind of default that people will watch the BBC or Sky, and why should they when we could perhaps produce something even more interesting?
Well, that's absolutely what the channel's here to do, and I'm sure you'll add to it greatly. And no wonder you won the Multimedia Award for 2021, because you do all sorts of different media. But here's my other thought on this. You're busy, you're ambitious, you're quite driven. You've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
Everyone talk about work-life balance. How does it all work?
What's that? Well, look, work-life balance, I think, I am a bit of a workaholic, but most journalists at the top of the game are. You have to be. You can't switch off. Stuff keeps on happening all the time that you need to react to. But obviously, my primary role is as a mother, and that's important, but I think that kind of gives me a bit of a real-life perspective. I was thinking about the Netflix documentary and was discussing it with a few women in the office, and, this perception of Meghan, and I feel like the world is divided into 2 types of women. Women that need to be helped into a ball gown and women who put the bins out. I'm probably in the latter category, and proudly so, Nigel. There's a sense to which I live a pretty real life, running around doing the school run in the morning and then coming in and writing stories about prime ministerial resignations in the afternoon. But that kind of keeps me grounded, I think.
And no boozing.
No boozing. Would you believe it? I know you frown on this because I've had lunch with you.
I tease you about it. I don't frown on it at all. Because actually, the truth is that it suits some people and it's disastrous for others.
Exactly. I think I've written before that drinking makes some people unwind and others unravel. I would say I was in the latter category. Very sadly, and I've written about this as well, my mother was a chronic alcoholic and drank herself to death in 2001, aged only 54.
Wow.
So I kind of felt that I needed to break that cycle. I felt the apple perhaps didn't fall far from the tree. I wasn't a good drinker, not like you. I can't hold my pint, so I decided to just stop entirely. And in a way, you say about kind of work-life balance, that helps because I haven't really got time to be drunk or hungover. And I find that I'm more productive without the booze. I don't mind, by the way, if anyone wants to get slaughtered around me. I don't have an objection. I love going out. I love socialising. I don't want to be drunk.
Final thought from you. You've worked for Conservative, whether big C or small C, newspapers. You hold those opinions yourself. Where's the Conservative Party going?
Nowhere at the moment. I'd be intrigued as to what you are planning, actually, with my journalistic hat on now, to what direction you might be going in terms of trying to hold their feet to the Tory flames, because we're sort of in this situation. Our readers hated Jeremy Hunt's budget. I mean, they loved Liz Truss's budget, but they didn't like the execution of it. I don't think they want those ideas to die. I think they're worried about Brexit and whether it has been done or whether it has been half-baked rather than a fully baked deal. And I think they worry about the future direction of the country. At the moment, they're facing a kind of Hobson's choice because they think that there's only a fag paper between Sunak and Starmer. And I don't necessarily think it's Labour's election to win. I think it's the Tories to lose because nobody's on their doorstep cheering for Labour right now. People are totally disaffected. It may be as well that just people want change. They've had 12 years of Tories and they've had enough.
And that pattern, that cycle does repeat, doesn't it, quite regularly?
But are you going to mount an opposition to all this?
I don't know. I've talked about it very openly many, many times. I'm very bruised by the 2015 general election. Very bruised by 4 million votes and 1 seat.
Yes.
Very bruised, and in the seat in which I stood, they just cheated. Wholesale, broke the law, were found guilty, and what happens? Someone gets a suspended sentence, and the result stands. So, for me, it's a big decision to take on the first-past-the-post system. But I think whatever happens here, whatever I decide to do or not do, I think we're crying out for a party that does actually believe in smaller government, believes in the individual entrepreneurship, and we're a long, long way from it at the moment.
But do you think you can take people over the edge without the kind of promise of Brexit? Because I know you've talked about PR, but it's just not as sexy as Brexit, is it?
I think, you know, I've got to ask myself, are we on the verge of a political revolution? Or is this just a moment at which the people are a bit disenchanted? I don't know the answer. You don't know the answer. But we're going to find out. And the fact that you're going to be helping us find out here on GB News, I take, Camilla, as a huge positive. And thank you for coming on Talking Points.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
OK, it's time for Barrage the Farage. I have no idea what you've sent me today, but I've kept Camilla in case the questions are too difficult for me. Mary asks, the hard left tried and failed to take political control. Do you think that they have moved into the unions to try to destabilise the country, as Scargill once did? Well, Scargill's a long time ago. You know, you've got to be sort of pushing on a little bit to remember Scargill and the miners' strike of 1984. Look, there's always been a hard left element within the trade unions, and there is a hard left element still within Labour, but I don't think it's got any more influence anymore, which I think is a good thing. I mean, would Starmer frighten you as Prime Minister?
Not really. I don't think he frightens anybody necessarily. Also, I think Momentum's run out of money. And activists, you know, and they haven't got old Compo to kind of cheer behind, so what's the point?
They had their shot at it and it didn't work. I agree with you. One viewer asks, isn't it time the Palace responded to these serious allegations made by Harry and Meghan? Michael Cole earlier thought that actually there was nothing here that was specific or damaging or fact-based, and it was best ignored and move on. Camilla, what say you?
Yeah, I think it's just generalised, kind of like their truth over actual proof. And what are they going to do? Provide a running commentary? They may as well maintain a dignified silence. They're at Westminster Abbey this evening. The Princess of Wales has put on a concert for the whole of the family, and apparently people were cheering, "We love you, Kate, we love you, William."
Good, good. If I'd been there, I'd have said the same thing. Mick asks, is Gary Lineker becoming an embarrassment? Look, I mean, it is tragic that a man of this talent, knowledge, wisdom, courage, why on earth is he doing football? He should be running BBC Politics. He should be chairing Question Time. He should be actually a university professor at Oxford or Cambridge. He is the font of all great political wisdom. Do you agree?
I feel there may be a degree of sarcasm in that comment, guys. I mean, I think was a good footballer. I think he's a great football pundit, but I think he sometimes strays into the territory of BBC bias, and it's not necessarily a great thing.
Well, I thought the whole thing was a complete embarrassment. Very quickly, seconds. Can Boris Johnson make a serious political comeback, or is he tainted forever, asks Robert. I can't see him coming back.
Never say never. Although apparently he's made £1 million since he stood down from office, and that's probably more enticing than going back in.
I bet Carrie loves that. Right, OK, Camilla, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for all your questions. I will be back with you. It'll be next Tuesday now that I'm with you. I'm away on Monday, but I'm going to hand you over now into the capable hands of Mark Dolan.
Programme ahead. I've got a brilliant solution for the nurses, and I've got a way of getting them their pay rise. We've got to axe NHS waste and get rid of woke job titles. I believe that the pay rises should come out of the current NHS budget. After all, the NHS costs everybody £200 billion a year. Surely that's enough. Is the vaccine safe and effective? No, says top cardiologist Aseem Malhotra. He joins me exclusively on the show and explains why he's partnering with Tory MP Andrew Bridgen. Plus Kelvin McKenzie on Harry and Meghan and my big opinion monologue. First up, the weather.
I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Milder weather is on the way, but it's going to be a frosty Friday with some snow likely across Scotland. Could be heavy in places as well and may cause some disruption, particularly on Friday morning's rush hour through the central belt. This is the culprit. Doesn't look much, does it? A fairly weak area of low pressure, but these weather fronts moving in will be bringing some wet weather, hitting that cold air, could provide some heavy snow later tonight. Still a few wintry showers over northern Scotland and for eastern England, where things could be quite icy, and some mist and fog patches reforming this evening, which could be quite dense. But for most, it's clear, and it is very cold, especially in the south. Actually, it won't be quite as cold across the northwest compared to recent nights, because here that wet weather is moving in. Some heavy snow over the Highlands, and then through the morning that could well slip through the central belt of Scotland, especially for that morning rush hour. We could see a few centimetres of snow for a time before it then starts to turn back to rain as we go into the afternoon. But the potential for some disruption as that wintry weather hits Scotland during tomorrow. A few showers for Northern Ireland, most of England, Wales dry and sunny once the fog has cleared, but still cold, struggling to get much above freezing. And quickly, on Friday evening, temperatures drop back below freezing. Bear that in mind if you're heading out. With showers across parts of the north, could be icy on Friday night and into Saturday morning. At this stage, the showers will mostly be of rain at low levels, but some snow is still possible, certainly over the hills of northern England during Saturday, and more snow showers coming in across the Highlands of Scotland. A few showers getting into parts of Wales as well. Again, most of these will be rain at low levels. Much of the south and the east will be dry and bright on Saturday. Look at this, 4-5 degrees. Most of us haven't seen that for a good few days. It's going to turn milder still on Sunday. This area of low pressure is moving in. It's bringing milder air, but it's also bringing strong winds and, for a time on Sunday, some heavy snow.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday night